The March 20th, 2018 meeting of the Hammond Plan Commission to order. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd stand, please. Roll call, please.
Roger Brock.
Here.
Dean Button.
Here.
Nathaniel Harris.
Here.
Ann Herbert.
Here.
William Hutton. Robert Markovich. Juan Moreno.
Here.
Sharon Zaney.
Here.
Thomas White.
Here.
7 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the February 20th, 2018 minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the February 20th, 2018
Second.
minutes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Any old business?
No old business.
New business, CP-18-04, petition of ATG for approval of a 6-lot subdivision called Oxbow Landing, 3rd edition, located at 2901 through 2929 Carlson Drive, which is zoned C4, General Commercial District within the city of Hammond.
Mr.
And
President,
have the notification requirements, or are there notification requirements needed? Have they been met? They have?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Mr. President,
Yes,
just to make a technical correction on the agenda, it is actually 2835 to 2929 Carlson Drive.
you want to repeat that, please?
Technical correction, the address is 2835 through 2929 Carlson Drive.
Thank you. And if the petitioner would please come forward, if you'd sign in with your name and address, and then please state your name and address.
No, totally separate.
That's what I asked.
My name is Catherine Harris. I'm Vice President of Development with ATG Real Estate Development, and I'm here representing 2929 Carlson Drive and 2901 Carlson Drive. In addition, I have my colleagues with me, Corey Houchin, the Vice President of Construction. Raquel Shamble is Vice President of Property Management. And we also have Don Turinga of Turinga Engineering with us this evening. Our request consists, we brought a drawing here. Our request consists of taking the two noted lots, currently Lot 2 and 3, and subdividing them into 6 lots, which will facilitate the development of additional general and medical office, along with restaurant, retail, and other services as permitted. Additionally, the development will be renamed with the new name being Oxbow Landing 3rd Edition. All lots fulfill the size requirements. As Lot 3 does not abut the public street of Carlson Drive, we are requesting a waiver. Due to the irregular shape of the property, it's not possible to give access to Lot 3 from Carlson Drive without a negative impact on the remainder of the development. The site has been designed with easements of street-like manner to provide access to the lot via a private drive. And the site plan has been reviewed for both public access and that of emergency vehicles. And it has been determined that using a private drive for access poses no harm to the public welfare. Through discussion and review of plans with all utilities, revisions to the preliminary easements have resulted in providing adequate opportunity for placement of services. Many of the services will be private, and rights and responsibilities will be addressed through a cross-easement agreement. We thank you for your consideration, and we ask that you grant the waiver and your preliminary and final approval of the subdivision.
Questions from the board? Any questions from the board members? Seeing none, we will open it up to,
Mr. President,
yes.
just for clarity purposes, based on how the staff report was written, the two LLCs they closed on the property on, what was the date of was it Thursday?
It was last Thursday, yes.
March 15th, they closed on the property. So the two LLCs in combined are owners of the entire property. The redevelopment commission was the owner of Lot 2, and that was sold to them as of last week.
Okay. Thank you. And at this point, we'll open it up to public hearing period. If there's any member of the public that would like to come forward with questions, concerns, please come forward. Again, opening it up to the public hearing portion. Anyone would like to come forward? And one last time. The public hearing portion is open. Seeing and hearing none, we will close it. And we'll move on to the staff and the staff report.
As noted before, we made the correction on who the petitioners are and their standing for this case. The presentation was very clear regarding the re-subdivision of two existing lots. There are some existing easements that are being retained from the previous subdivision. There was a no-build easement that was affecting Lot 3, where the current office building is constructed. There's an existing utility easement for the sanitary district that crosses the property. That's going to retain. The original plats had a cross-access easement between Lot 2 and 3, and that has been recently released through the fact that the petitioner is owner of both sides of the property. As noted in the petition, one of the lots, Lot 3 in particular, does not meet the technical requirements of the subdivision ordinance, but the Plan Commission has a right to grant, at least the term is variance under the current ordinance, but that is superseded by state statute that refers to it as waiver. So there are 4 criteria that the Plan Commission must address for granting the waiver that is in the recommendation. Not detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare. And just to point out that the easement was placed on the common property line. That is where, in reference to the original subdivision, Lot 1 is the brewery, and Lot 2 is the recently purchased lot. That's where that access easement is placed. That is the one that is intended to be developed in a street-like manner to meet the requirements of having regular access into that lot for the traffic and emergency services. It was mentioned that the conditions for that are unique to this property is that it is related to the nature of the parent parcel and how the lots were designed in order to facilitate the appropriate development. What is unique about the property, that's really the criteria number 3, that would distinguish it between, you know, a hardship or an inconvenience, and financial hardship is not really a consideration for a waiver. But the property is irregularly shaped. It abuts the expressway interchange, and that makes it very difficult for the traditional lot having access directly to the street. And then, is there any issue with the zoning ordinance or floodplain? The property is no longer in the floodplain, and then the zoning ordinance, in order to meet this criteria, that is going to be addressed in the next case with the proposed overlay district. So staff recommends that the Plan Commission grant 1, the waiver to section 157.021B, subject to the development of the access drive on the common property line of Lot 1, Oxbow Landing 2nd Edition, and the proposed Lots 3 and 4 of Oxbow Landing 3rd Edition in a street-like manner, and adopt the findings proposed by staff. And 2, grant preliminary and final approval of the Oxbow Landing 3rd Edition, subject to the extinguishment of the cross-access easement between Lots 2 and 3 of the Oxbow Landing 2nd Edition. And in 3, I'm going to add a third one, is that there's a technical question that came up regarding some language related to some of the easements. So recommend approval with, subject to the technical corrections of the subdivision plat. And if you, Plan Commission agrees that the staff asks that you adopt this report as, this amended report as its findings of fact.
Thank you, Brian. Questions from the board? Any questions for Brian regarding his report or recommendations? Seeing none.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Button.
I would like to recommend or make a motion to grant the waiver to section 157.021B, subject to the development of the access drive on the common property line of Lot 1, Oxbow Landing 2nd Edition, and proposed Lots 3 and 4 of Oxbow Landing 3rd Edition in a street-like manner, and adopt the findings proposed by staff. Also, grant preliminary and final approval of the Oxbow Landing 3rd Edition subdivision plat, subject to the extinguishment of the cross-access agreements between lots 2 and 3 of Oxbow Landing 2nd Edition, and 3, subject to the technical corrections of the subdivision plat. I so move.
Thank you very much. Could we get a second?
Second.
And roll call?
Roger Brock.
Yes.
Dean Button.
Yes.
Nathaniel Harris.
Yes.
Ann Herbert.
Yes.
Juan Moreno.
Yes.
Sharon Zaney.
Yes.
Thomas White.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
And now we would need a motion.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to adopt this staff report as a findings of fact.
And can we get a second?
Second.
It's amended report.
The amended report, correct?
Amended report, I apologize.
That's what I thought you said. Roll call, please.
Roger Brock.
Yes.
Dean Button.
Yes.
Nathaniel Harris.
Yes.
Ann Herbert.
Yes.
Juan Moreno.
Yes.
Sharon Zaney.
Yes.
Thomas White.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Very good. Moving on to CP-18-05, petition of ATG for approval of an overlay district called Oxbow Landing Overlay District located at 2835 through 2929 Carlson Drive, which is zoned C4, General Commercial District within the city of Hammond. And you're back.
Thank you. Our petition requests the creation and implementation of an overlay district to enhance the base C4 zoning of Oxbow Landing, 3rd edition, which will provide for a more cohesive and defined appearance and structure in the subdivision. The subdivision will consist of 2 lots with multi-story office buildings which mirror each other in size and architecture, as well as 4 additional outlots with buildings to be determined as users are defined. This picture is a representation of the building that will be constructed on 2901 Carlson Drive and is the sister building to the building that is now in place and that I'm sure most of you are familiar with at 2929 Carlson Drive. They will be this really mirror images of each other. Buildings for the outlots will also carry similar design features as lots 1 and 2 in order to create a harmonious feel both within the subdivision and throughout Oxbow Landing as a whole. What we have here is a rendering of the outlot studies so you can see there are some similarities in design, in architecture of the outlots and the buildings at 2929 Carlson Drive and 2901 Carlson Drive. The Oxbow Landing Overlay District will address zoning provisions by outlining permitted and prohibited uses per our development agreement with the City of Hammond, identifying requirements for allotted parking per use, lot size, setbacks, and buildable area. Further defines the allowable signage for the development, which follows the prescribed ordinance, however excludes the address numbers for the building, and affords the flexibility of distributing the signage among the various outlot buildings as may be required by the users. Providing guidance for architectural elements, which will ensure consistent development now and in the future. Adoption of this overlay district will allow us to utilize the available property in the most efficient manner and deliver an attractive development to the market, which will in turn support economic growth in the city. Thank you for your consideration of this petition, and we request your approval of this ordinance.
Thank you. I failed to ask about the notifications, Brian. Would I be wrong assuming that the CP 1804 was inclusive of the 1805
Yes,
on notifications?
yes.
We'll just acknowledge that the notifications were.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just doing housekeeping.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And questions from the board?
I would just say I admire the building that you've constructed to this point. What a wonderful facility that you have there. Great mirror image, and I'm pleased that we got to see at least some concepts about what the outlot construction would look like. I know that's going to be very difficult to handle in the future depending on your nature of tenants, but it seems to mirror very well with what you have out there now, so thank you for that.
Thank you. We're very excited to get moving on the new project.
It'll be nice to have 2 nice, attractive structures like that.
Yeah, we are thrilled, absolutely thrilled for this.
Just for everybody's understanding, the pictures are representational of what could be developed here or what's intended to be developed. You are not approving those tonight. What you are approving is the overlay district ordinance, and I want to make sure that whether there are any questions and do you understand the concept of an overlay district? This will be the second time that we have done that, and I just want to make sure that you are comfortable with it.
Questions or concerns of Brian? No? Seeing none.
Okay, so I think the presentation went through the provisions that we're trying to do, and I think it is a good technique. An overlay district is a good technique to try and really direct the development to be consistent and in a comprehensive direction that is not normally allowed within the strict C4 zoning. So I think it's a great opportunity to really try and make this development very cohesive within itself as well as within the surroundings.
Thank you, Brian. Any follow-up questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll open it up to the public hearing portion. Please come forward. You'll need to sign in, state your name. Again, opening up the public hearing portion. And finally, opening the public hearing portion, and seeing none and hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. And Brian, I guess you're on with the staff report and recommendations.
Yeah, one of the points that we kind of addressed in the subdivision portion of this was the interconnectivity of the private water system and with the public-private storm and sanitary system. The issues with that in that development, there's a plating component, and then there's also the issues of how that will be maintained, and that is something that would be addressed under a private agreement. As far as the overlay district, again, this is the C4 zoning will remain in the place. All the colors on our maps will be unchanged, and that this will just be an additional layer of provisions to administer the development. So therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the text and map amendment to the zoning ordinance for the Oxbow Landing Overlay District, OXLAND in abbreviation, and send the ordinance to the City Council with a favorable recommendation. If the Planning Commission agrees with the recommendation, the staff requests that this report be adopted by the Planning Commission as findings of fact.
Questions of the board for Brian regarding the staff report or recommendations? Hearing none.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Button.
I would like to recommend that, or make a motion to have this, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the text and map amendment to the zoning ordinance for the Oxbow Landing Overlay District, that is OXLAND, and send this ordinance to the City Council with a favorable recommendation. I so move.
Did we get a second?
Second.
And roll call.
Roger Brock,
Yes.
Dean Button.
Yes.
Nathaniel Harris,
Yes.
Ann Herbert,
Yes.
Juan Moreno,
Yes.
Sharon Zaney,
Yes.
Thomas White,
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
And we would need a motion now regarding the staff report.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Button.
I move that we adopt this report as a finding of fact.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
And roll call.
Roger Brock,
Yes.
Dean Button.
Yes.
Nathaniel Harris.
Yes.
Ann Herbert,
Yes.
Juan Moreno,
Yes.
Sharon Zaney,
Yes.
Thomas White,
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Very well. Good luck. Okay, moving on to CP-18-06, petition of Buchanan Energy LLC for approval of a 3-lot subdivision called Cabela Gateway Second Edition, located in the 7900 block of Cabela Drive, which is zoned C4 within the city of Hammond. And I see the petitioner is all set and ready. If you'll, did you sign in?
I will in just a moment. I promise that I'll do that.
And if you'll state your
I
name,
will certainly
please.
do that. I'm
Oh, notifications on this, Remet?
Is that a question or a statement?
A question?
Okay, the answer is yes. They will.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. Scott Yaney. It's always my pleasure and honor to appear before this board. I have an office in Munster on Calumet Avenue and also one in Valparaiso. I'm here before you this evening on behalf of Buchanan Energy N, as in Nebraska, LLC. I have a number of folks with me as well. I think we've crossed our Ts and dotted our Is so that you won't need to hear too much further from them, but I do want to at least let you know who is here with us. Cole, this is Cole. I haven't met Cole face to face for a little while, but Cole is our surveyor, has done tremendous work, especially with Brian. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I'll let the responsible folks sign it.
Okay.
And then I have Richard McMahon and Matt Atkin. They're on behalf of Bucks Inc., which is a real estate arm, but also on behalf of Buchanan Energy LLC. And we have Pat Daly, who I think a lot of you folks have known throughout the year, and I think we all say, boy, it's a good guy to work with, and we always appreciate that opportunity. And then Tim Schwartz with Oak Ridge Properties here with us as well this evening. So we have two petitions here before you. We have 06 and 07. 06 is approval of a subdivision. I'll get to that in just a moment. Cabela's Gateway, second edition, City of Hammond. And then 07 is a development plan for one of the lots in this new proposed subdivision. We're dealing with the ground here tonight because that's what we all know has got to happen first, right? We got to get the ground taken care of, make sure everything is lined up so we can get things in the air. We're hoping that we get the requisite approvals tonight so that we can kickstart some development in that Cabela's subdivision, and that's what we aim to do. Along the way, we've benefited. I keep seeing Dean up there. He's been a part of lots of meetings on this, along with certainly Brian. And there were a lot of details with this site to work out. A lot of those are detailed. I've seen Mr. Poland's report, detailing things such as easements, how we're going to move traffic in and out of this facility that we propose for this development plan. I've given you toward that end, a lot of our drawings are engineering in nature and surveys and such. I circulated at the beginning of the meeting to give you some materials I delivered at a redevelopment commission hearing that allowed us to get to this stage, at least give you a sense of what our project envisions and entails. And we think, that's not the business of this meeting necessarily, but we do think the approval for what we're going to do is going to help us spur some further development. And this development, this specific development for Lot 1 is intended, and it is believed will greatly enhance opportunities to do further development on those remaining lots in that Cabela's subdivision. So moving on to the approval for the subdivision, we have the application before you that you all folks have seen and set forth. We've got a number of parcels here, and we are seeking to subdivide the property as described in the documents and the engineering drawings and surveys that you see before you. We think that this will more orderly and definitively describe the plat and give opportunities for development of specific lots. And the planning involved enables further development because we're providing for things such as access drives, the location of easements. There was a vacated easement a long time ago of an alley when something far different than Indianapolis Boulevard was contemplated. A little housing division was contemplated, and there was an old easement that was out there that was still lingering in some effect, and the utilities ran in that area. And so we had to do some reconfiguring of utilities, which involved a lot of discussion and negotiation by these folks and tracking down who held these easements and then getting them all sorted out and to run coherently, not only for Lot 1, but for future development of other lots. So we think this proposal enables the orderly development of that entire subdivision and will even allow further development in other areas that aren't contemplated by our petitions here this evening. And as discussed with Brian, we are in an economic development area. There's an economic development plan that covers this area, and we think that we are in line with that plan, what is contemplated and proposed here. I've given you some details that, you know, this is going to be a convenience store, gas station, and car wash, but I wanted to give you at least some sense that there are exceptional materials, thoughtful design that's being put into this project, landscaping, and thoughtful attributes other than just trying to move folks in and out of a gas station and a car wash. This is going to be an impressive facility, and it will really be very compatible with the uses that are there, and we think actually draw more folks in and be attractive to other folks that want to develop in those sites. As for this subdivision, we think that that it is well within the scope of what is intended for that area and has always been intended for that area. So we would seek approval of the subdivision application. And I can move on, just run on into the development plan. Nope, I'm going to stop right there. Okay. So if there are any further comments or questions, I'd be happy to address those.
Questions, concerns from the board?
Mr. President.
Mr. Button?
The title of this is three-lot subdivision, and just for clarification, the three lots you're describing are, could you describe the three lots that are included? Because I'm a little unclear on that.
Actually, I can do that for you. The subdivision is following a format that was set for the Gateway, Cabela Gateway edition, original edition, where there's a block system and a lot system. So what this parcel is the remnant of Block 3. The Walmart property is the other part of Block 3. So it is being renamed, I guess, and reconfigured into the second edition. So the proposed, the lot for the proposed fueling station, which is the second case here, that is Lot 1 of Block 1. The currently existing levee easement that exists along the levee on the southern side of the property is going to be referred to as Outlot A of Block 1. And then the remainder of the property is going to be Block 2. At some point in time, we would probably be entertaining a re-subdivision of Block 2 once that is ready for development. So the three lots are Lot 1 of Block 1, Outlot A of Lot 1, and Block 2.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll move into the, Brian?
Okay, I have some questions we've had a lot of discussion about the release of easements, and I would like to have a status report of where that was at.
Okay, so there is an easement release agreement circulating, as you know. Cole can step up and.
Cole can step up.
Yes, he's the gentleman that's been.
Hi, Cole.
Hi, Brian, how are you?
And Cole, you signed in, right?
Yes, I did.
Thank you
My
very
name is
much.
Cole Helfrich. I'm with Kanaki and Associates, the design firm that's doing the lifting on this one. As Brian is well aware and asks, the situation on this parcel, as Scott pointed out, we had at one time a proposed residential development from the 1920s that then became ultimately INDOT right-of-way, that then became surplus from INDOT and reverted to private ownership. In the course of that, there was a 20-foot alley and a street that were vacated by ordinance. The ordinance was drafted, I guess I would say, in a somewhat unorthodox fashion, in that it did not specifically reserve easement rights in those areas, but it did make provision for that there might be easement rights in those areas. Secondly, adjacent to the alley is a 5-foot utility easement that was granted to the predecessor of NIPSCO. That is exclusively to NIPSCO. Both the vacated alley and the 5-foot easement traverse, as you can see on the plat, through the developed or proposed development right under the canopy of the C-store. After working with Brian at some length, it was determined that I guess I'd say the belt and suspenders technique would be to proceed to develop releases from the franchised utilities over this vacated alley and vacated street. We have, Alan Perlman with Pat Daly has drafted a release document which has been circulated. We also went one step further and we did an Indiana 811 search on these areas and determined that there was in fact one abandoned sewer line and no other utilities. Nonetheless, we have been working to secure releases from NIPSCO, AT&T, Comcast, the Hammond Sanitary District, and the Hammond Waterworks Department to release any rights that may be construed to exist in the 20-foot alley and the vacated street. As of today, I have received either hard copy signed releases or written approval of this release process from Comcast, AT&T, NIPSCO, and the Hammond Waterworks Department. I'm still waiting to hear from the Sanitary District, but other than that, all the releases are in place or will be very shortly. With regard to the 5-foot utility easement from 1925 that was granted to NIPSCO, that is a whole different process because it involved the relocation. That is, in fact, occupied by NIPSCO with overhead power lines. So to cut to the chase, we have secured an agreement with NIPSCO wherein they will relocate their overhead lines and run them right along the Indianapolis Boulevard frontage inside of a new easement that we are granting to them. And I have been informed from the NIPSCO Real Estate Division that they will, in fact, draft the release of their 5-foot easement and will record it themselves. And I was told last Friday that I would have results in that process early this week. Well, it's early in the week and I haven't heard anything yet, but I do anticipate it's a done deal. Short course, it's a done deal. Brian, what's your take on all this?
Well, I mean, I think it was very important that that is discussed with the Plan Commission. Again, it is a vacated alley and street. It is a 5-foot easement associated with NIPSCO, and it was a 20-foot easement. Utility easement from the previous plat. And making sure that those are released is critical. You know, if they aren't released, and they technically have to be shown on the plat, and you know that there's a lot of documentation. Things have to be recorded in a certain order to make sure the rights are properly extinguished. There's some technical stuff that goes on with this. But yes, I'm very glad that you've been able to secure as much as you have.
It's been amusing, trust me.
I can imagine.
You are.
I can imagine.
And thank you, Brian. I merrily tripped over the 20-foot easement that runs adjacent to the 20-foot alley. There is also a utility easement that has been through some metamorphosis, but now exists as a utility easement granted to the franchisees of Hammond that is not occupied by any utility. So the release that Mr. Perlman prepared, in fact, releases the 20-foot easement, the 20-foot alley, and the street, all in one document. Now those are shown on the plat, Dean, that you're looking at. You can see it right there. As Brian points out,
I'm having a hard time finding some of those.
may I approach the bench?
Oh, Sure.
Certainly.
I mean, actually, I can do it.
Where's the 20-foot wide easement he's
It's-
referring to?
This is the alley.
Right.
5 foot is parallel, it's not shown, the 20 foot is not shown, because the expectation is that they will be released before they don't have to be shown.
I see. In the end, as it's recorded, those easements would be removed, but
This
we,
has to be shown, because you always show the underlying subdivision.
So the
yeah,
point that Brian is making, if I can put words in his mouth, is that this plat, as it exists at this moment, shows the easements as they exist at this moment. But by the time this is recorded, some of those dashed lines are going to be removed because we are securing these releases. So the plat, when it gets completely done, is going to be much cleaner than it is right now.
but those lines are gone.
Well, right, this version that we
Lines.
have.
Oh, okay, I did
the
eliminate
The 20 foot's eliminated, the
Yeah.
5 foot's eliminated.
Okay.
So,
So
yeah.
okay, in that case.
This
that-
would
I'm
be the
sorry.
final plat
That's-
as corrected
yeah,
once
that's
all of
the
your
intent.
releases.
Right.
So
And we're there.
the easement that you're granting to NIPSCO is also shown
Right along
along the,
the right-of-way of Indianapolis. That's the
it's a
5
five proposed 5 foot
electrical
electric.
service easement. That's right.
I was unclear on that you
And
mentioned
under
you were.
that, we have the 10-foot easement to cover the Highland Force Main that is in place and is not going to be relocated.
Right, but that's actually in the INDOT, the Highland Forest Main's actually in the INDOT right away.
Most of it, but it does clip the
Oh.
northerly corner.
You're right, okay, you're right, yeah.
So we made provision for that, and then we made provision for the 5-foot along the Indianapolis Boulevard right-of-way, which has been approved by NIPSCO to the point where we have a letter of no objection from NIPSCO consenting to all these processes that I've mentioned here. The relocation, the extinguishment of the existing easement, the acceptance of the new easement. I have it in writing.
And you'll provide that to Brian.
Oh, yeah, I think I have, don't I? You got the loan, don't you?
You know, I'm not 100% sure if I have.
Okay, but no big deal. I have it.
So I would just comment that I will check with the sanitary board. I would expect that action to take place next Tuesday at the sanitary board's
Okay.
regularly scheduled Board of Sanitary Commissioners meeting. I serve on that board as
Okay.
well. So I will make sure we keep an eye out for it, but that's likely why you haven't got a response from the
Well,
sanitary.
I sent it to the president, a contact that,
Sam Demopoulos.
brain cramp. I sent two. I got the contacts from Brian, so whoever it was is theoretically the right person. We'll
Yeah, yeah, it
take
might-
care of it.
I will keep an eye out
Yeah.
for it, is what
Okay,
I'm telling you.
Well, I know that half of it was right because I sent the same email to the Water Works Department, and I got a signed PDF today and a hard copy in the mail.
Okay,
And that may
So-
be just on
May
their
have
board
gone to
meetings.
Marty, by the way, so we'll
I
look
think
back
that
at
sounds right.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
right.
So, yeah, if you could, that'd be fine.
I'll
If
keep an
there's-
eye out for it.
All right, if there's somebody else I need to send it to, I'd be happy to. It's not a big deal. But I just,
Would be Marty Wilgus, who is.
Yes, that's it.
is
That's
the
it. It's Marty
district
Wilgus,
manager.
'cause
He's the gentleman that
that's who I sent it to.
should receive it, yeah.
So, okay, good, thanks, Dean, appreciate it.
The other thing I want to get clarity on is you're showing the utility easement that is overlaying the levy easement. And had you gotten a response from the Little Cal Commission?
No,
on that?
let me enlarge on that. What Brian is asking about is you'll note on the southeasterly corner of Lot 1, there is a utility easement that runs parallel to that lot line within the confines of Outlot A. Outlot A is the levee. Physically, that easement does not touch the levee. What this is for is to reroute the buried electrical cable that is going out along Indianapolis Boulevard. It is then coming back into the existing easement, the portion thereof which is not being extinguished. And the existing poles, we're headed for one pole in particular, where NIPSCO is then going to come up, back up out of the ground and continue down Indianapolis. The question was raised by Brian, is the levy district okay with all this? I did my due diligence on this, and I found the documents that created the levy easement. And at no point in any of those documents is any utility use precluded. In one instance, there's two documents, but in one of the documents, it makes an allowance specifically for utility installations as long as they do not touch the levee. We are 5 to 7 feet away from the bottom of the levee. There is no issue. Now, no, I have not spoken with the Little Calumet District. I did shoot you an email last week asking for some help on that front. I get it. I miss a lot too. I'll shoot you another one tomorrow. Can I get a contact somewhere? Because I would, just to be polite and to follow the course, I would still like to contact them in, as a gesture of good faith.
And I strongly expect that.
Right.
But other than it's Dan Repay, Dean,
Correct. Executive Director.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'd probably be the good goal
yeah.
right there. And I'll take care of that.
Dave Wickland's the attorney. Who is it? Dave Wickland.
And according to our attorney, Dave Wickland, who has a similar name to our attorney, but Dave Wickland is their attorney.
Thanks. Okay, yeah, that's perfect. I'll be happy to pick up that thread tomorrow. No problem.
I have a phone number for you, a work telephone number for Dan. Or I could give it to you afterwards. I'll give it to you afterwards.
Just,
Okay, fine.
right, okay. So, Mr. President, I think we were at the point of, I was getting some clarity on the status of where we were at, and I have my questions answered, so.
You're exhausted on questions?
He's the Energizer Bunny. He's never exhausted.
Unlikely, yes, unlikely, yeah.
Mr. President,
Mr. Button?
during the course of this discussion, I noticed when you were discussing about the easement for the Little Calumet River, in that southeast corner, it points to a proposed 10-foot utility easement that is perpendicular to Indianapolis Boulevard that is not of the same width as the 10-foot easement that runs along the southern border of the parcel. In other words, one 10-foot wide easement looks wider than another measured.
That's because the moron that drafted the plat forgot to change the number.
So is do you know what that dimension is?
That'd be me.
You know what that
It's
dimension?
25.
25. So we would, if we did act on this, we would, as amended, with the 25.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. There's likely to be a couple more amendments too, but I've got to enter the document numbers. On the top of the plat, you'll see that the easements were extinguished by document so-and-so. So we are going to have to add a couple of things, and that will be corrected, yes.
Thank you.
Sharp eye, Mr. Button.
Any other questions? Thank you for your enlightening us on everything.
Quite all right.
And we're at the public hearing portion, and I would open up the public hearing period and ask that anyone in the public wanting, having questions or concerns, please come forward. Again, going to open up the public hearing portion. Anyone, any member of the public wanting to come forward, please do so at this time. And finally, public hearing period is open. Please come forward. Hearing nothing, seeing nothing, we will close the public hearing period. And we will move on to the staff report. Brian?
I hope everybody has a thorough understanding of this subdivision and our whole question of the easements. Therefore, I'll just jump down to that the staff recommends that the Plan Commission grant preliminary and final approval of the subdivision plat, subject to the release of easements for the alleys and the two parallel utility easements, and confirmation that the Little Calumet River Basin Development Commission does not object to the placement of the utility easement over their levy easement, and also subject to the technical corrections that were discussed. And then if the Plan Commission agrees, then the staff recommends that the Plan Commission adopt this amended staff report as its findings of fact.
Thank you, Brian. Questions regarding the staff report or the recommendations from the board? Any questions? If not,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Button.
I'm going to do my best here again. I would make a motion to grant preliminary and final approval of the subdivision plat, subject to the release of easements for the alley and 2 parallel utility easements, and confirmation that the Little Calumet River Basin Development Commission does not object to the placement of the utility easement over their levee easement, and technical corrections as discussed. I so move.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
roll call, please.
Roger Brock,
Yes.
Dean Button.
Yes.
Nathaniel Harris.
Yes.
Ann Herbert.
Yes.
Juan Moreno.
Yes.
Sharon Zany.
Yes.
Thomas White.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Button.
I would also move to adopt this staff report as amended as a finding of fact.
Thank you.
Second that motion.
We have a second. Could we have a roll call, please?
Roger Brock.
Yes.
Dean Button.
Yes.
Nathaniel Harris.
Yes.
Ann Herbert.
Yes.
Juan Moreno.
Yes.
Sharon Zany.
Yes.
Thomas White.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Very good. Moving on to CP-18-07, petition of Buchanan Energy LLC of a developmental plan for Cabela Gateway Second Edition, commonly known as 7920 Indianapolis Boulevard, pursuant to Title /Section 8.90 and Title 27 of Ordinance 8514. And I see our petitioner is ready.
Thank you. I got my best material sitting here just a moment because our friend Cole looked over, hey, Scott, have you ever had a chance to actually go to one of these Buc-ee's? I said, well, I was online. I kind of checked a bunch of them out online when I was learning about the client, what to present initially, and then I've looked at a lot of renderings and elevations and site plans and all the rest. But I said, no. He said, well, you gotta see it. Something really different. It's a really cool facility. And I think a lot of what he has said is true, and I've heard that from the mouths of others, but I've also seeing it on their attention to detail and work that they plan to put in here, that this is something that is a cut above and a step above here. There are a lot of details here, and I'll just hit a couple of things. So it is a convenience store. It's got a car wash. It's obviously going to have some pump stations. It has 10 of those in one fueling canopy, and then a second fueling canopy of double-sided pump stations intended for RVs and such. We've had discussion about semi-tractor trailer, and that absolutely is not our intention. This site is not engineered for those. We don't want those anywhere near us because it's not designed for that, and there's no encouragement for those folks to come visit. The primary access is going to be on the south side of the parcel, or of the lot, rather. This is Lot 1, to be specific. I kind of referenced it at the outset, but we're in Lot 1 of Block 1 of our newly adopted subdivision we just had approved. And so our primary access will be via Indianapolis Boulevard. However, we also have connection via the Cabela Drive entrance. And we've talked about, and that's going to be a right-in, right-out connection. We've looked at a lot of those configurations, what's required by the state of Indiana, because this is under INDOT jurisdiction, and we've met and worked to achieve all of those requirements. We have, there are some very specific guidelines for fueling stations. And Dean has a gentleman that assists him that is expert in dealing with this, because there's a lot of complexities, and looking how you move vehicles around, anything from the trucks that actually fuel, you know, below the pumps, what we get to see on a daily basis, right, to put it in the ground in those tanks, to the cars that come in and out, cars that are going to be queuing in this car wash and moving in and around. And we've got a large convenience store. It's going to be a very nice one, but we've got a lot of folks that will be coming in and out. So we really do need to pay attention in detail to how they're going to safely navigate. And I think we've accomplished that, and there's been a lot of, hey, can we do this? Can we do this? Look at this turning radii to make sure we're here. Can we get fire trucks on site? All the rest. And I think we can confidently say that we're now at the point where we've got a very workable development plan that passes muster. We do hit the landscaping requirements, and I think you're going to see they'll put nice landscaping that will reflect the well. They're using, if you kind of get a sense from the document I circulated earlier, they're going to use a lot of nice finishes, building materials on this. This is not just something that's getting thrown up. It's a lot of thought and energy is going into this, how it presents and how it reflects on their company. You know, this is a company that has a lot of pride. They started out, you know, one guy that has a vision and brought it all the way through. Family-owned business out of Nebraska, and they're starting to branch out, but they're not leaping to branch out. They're doing so very intentionally and carefully, and they want to do something right in Indiana because this will be their entry to Indiana. So we have 32 spaces. There's some vacuums that they're going to take for a couple of those that'll take that away. We have the queue storage for the car wash that provides for 9 rather than 10, but I think we've considered this in totality that does work on this parcel. We talked a lot about utilities, so I don't want to go into too much more dealing with utilities. And then trying to see here, stormwater, we've hit all of that, contemplated that well. But that didn't come easily, I will say that. There was a lot of thought and consideration that went into the stormwater management and how that was going to be handled. But in the plans that you now have submitted, I think we've crossed that T and dotted a lot of I's as well. We have the internal access drive that I referenced at the outset that's going to allow for development of other parcels in this area. Our setbacks, our signage, we're in compliance with the signage ordinance, and we've wanted to make sure that we fit well within that. Our photometric plan is compliant. I think as we go through all of these, the requirements and the details that we address, that this is a harmonious use and efficient use of this property, and I hope that you'll agree. And if you have any questions, I'm here, and so are the folks from our team.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Mr. President.
Mr. Butt?
Seems like I have all the comments or questions. I would just thank the petitioner right off the bat that we've had a lot of communications with the petitioner, the developer, and they really have met every one of our expectations throughout the whole process. I know that we found some synergies on the site as it relates particularly to stormwater, which I think helped improve the layout of the site better, and I just am very grateful that you were conscientious enough to take into account some of the things that we've been working on, so very much appreciated. I would ask that I do understand that there is an outstanding issue as it relates to the Department of Transportation and how they envision the intersection at Cabela's Drive and Indianapolis Boulevard. We're asking for a median to separate east and west, if I can say east and west flowing traffic, if you oriented Indianapolis Boulevard north and south, which isn't entirely true, but to prevent some illegal turn movements into the right in, right out off of Cabela's Drive. That's what we were focusing on. So there are still communications with the Department of Transportation on that subject, sir?
That's my understanding, yes. I don't have the latest. I don't know if anybody has any updates.
Yes.
Cole,
Microphone, please.
Microphone.
Yes, Steve Cutter was a design engineer with our firm, and I know that he is working with NDOT on this. This is, as you point out, it's been kind of a thorn for a long time, but we're there. I can't promise you because I'm not privy to the nuts and bolts of that conversation, but yes, we're close.
It's just an outstanding matter. It's important to us. I
Of
think
course.
the department understands where we're coming from, and so we expect you to get that approved. I can't say enough how difficult this site has been, and the developer has done just a terrific job of accommodating the concerns that the city has. We have very rigorous requirements for our gas station, because we've learned the hard way, well before I was ever involved with city government, that we've learned that there is a good way and a difficult way to develop fueling stations, and we are grateful that you're not treating this as a truck fuel depot, because that would make the site very difficult. So
Thank you for the kind words and for recognizing the fact that there are C-stores and then there's buses. It's a different thing.
Any other questions, concerns from the board? Hearing none, we'll move on to the public hearing portion. Again, anyone in the public having any questions or concerns, please come forward. The public hearing period is now open. Any member of the public with questions or concern, please come forward. And finally, the public hearing period is open. For those having questions or concerns, please come forward. Hearing none, seeing none, we will close the public hearing period and move on to the staff reports and recommendations.
I think one of the most important things about this project is really trying to get an end product that is going to be important and appropriate for such a prominent location right at the Indianapolis Boulevard intersection with Cabela Drive, right close to the expressway. And this is the entrance into that Cabela development. And working through a lot of these details is certainly has gotten us to the point where we can say that we've got a good product for this development, and appreciative of the cooperation with everybody on the petitioner side. That being said, there's always details, and I think we've worked through the majority of the details. One of the things that's referenced in my staff report that is now no longer an issue, there was a question about the height of the sign. That has been corrected, and so the signage is compliant. I think we're still waiting on some of the technical information for the oil and water separator that is needed for all fueling stations. The landscape requirement is met, the parking is met, the stacking is met. One of the things that's also important to this site, and it's related to the subdivision plat that was approved, is that this particular site creates the beginning of the internal access drive that is going to work parallel, in essence, with the Cabela Drive to help with the challenging access off of Cabela Drive to bring people in off the levee side of the property, off of the boulevard, and that internal drive is really important for getting access to the businesses that are going to be there, and I think that's, it's great that we've started that in this particular development. I think we've already talked about the utility questions. I mentioned the signage, so that's my summary of the 15 points that are in that section. The staff recommendation, Overall, the development plan is being designed to be compatible in design and architectural character, which results overall in a harmonious, efficient, and convenient retail area. Because of Section 27.05, Plan Commission needs to make findings of fact, and they are described herein. The development plan complies with the applicable standards of the underlying district in which the lot is located, subject to the BZA granting the conditional use permit and the technical corrections, including not limited to, and I'm going to strike sign, landscaping, I'm going to strike landscaping, oil, water, and separator, utility releases, and subdivision plat. Upon finalization of the second point being upon finalization of the subdivision plat approval and release of easements, the development plan will be in compliance with the subdivision control ordinance. And then 3, the proposed development is compatible with the architecture and character of the existing area and therefore is appropriate. And 4 is the proposed development occurs on appropriately zoned property as contemplated in the 1992 comprehensive plan as amended. Therefore, staff recommends that the Plan Commission grant final approval of the development plan subject to the finalization of the technical requirements, again, striking signage, striking landscaping, so it leaves the oil, water, and separator. 2, approval of the conditional use permit by the BZA and that restriction that the semi-trucks are not allowed to fuel at the site. And then 3, approval of the subdivision plat and the utility releases. If the Plan Commission agrees that this amended report should be adopted as preliminary findings of fact.
Questions from the board regarding the recommendations or the staff report?
Mr. President, not necessarily a question, but I did, I've overly been praising the developer. Just one more comment, and that is the fact that you're putting the fueling tanks at a location where they're not in the drive area, those fueling ports to the tanks is just it's going to make the site even better than it really is. All too often, we're driving through these drive areas and driving over the caps for the fuel lids, and you've done that in a marvelous way. So,
Well designed.
yeah, so it's well thought out. It's probably one of the best plans that I've seen in this case, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Button. Sure. Hearing no further,
Mr. President,
Button.
I move to grant a final approval of the development plan, subject to, number 1, finalization of the technical requirements, including but not limited to the oil and water separator. Number 2, approval of the conditional use permit by the BZA and a restriction that semi-trucks are not allowed to fuel at this site. And 3, approval of the subdivision plat and utility releases. I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Button. Could we get a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Roger Brock.
Yes.
Dean Button.
Yes.
Nathaniel Harris.
Yes.
Ann Herbert.
Yes.
Juan Moreno.
Yes.
Sharon Zany.
Yes.
Thomas White.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion that this report should be adopted as preliminary findings of fact.
Thank you. Can we get a second?
Second.
As amended.
As amended.
As amended.
And then to specifically call out the findings of fact that are referenced there for section 27.05.
So moved.
Second.
Got a second? Roll call, please.
Roger Brock.
Yes.
Dean Button.
Yes.
Nathaniel Harris.
Yes.
Ann Herbert.
Yes.
Juan Moreno.
Yes.
Sharon Zany.
Yes.
Thomas White.
Yes.
7 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, motion passed.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any correspondence, Brian?
No correspondence.
Any commissioners' comments? And staff comments?
At this point, I am not anticipating an April Plan Commission meeting. Always subject to change, so don't book your flight yet.
But as of now, no. And if we did, what would the date be?
It would be, April 16th, wow.
Did you say 15th?
I said the 16th, Dave is saying otherwise.
What did you say, Dave?
I just suggested maybe it could be on Tuesday again, but
Okay. And any public comment? Hearing none. A motion for adjournment? Second. All right. Those in favor?
right.
Aye. All right. Thank you, everybody.